I want to just bring together some thoughts from the day, particularly some thoughts from local authorities, the things that have worked, that haven't worked. I spent 20 years working in local government, 10 of them here as head of sustainability, before moving to Cornwall for a different kind of wild. I'm passionate about it because, well, primarily because of the wildlife implications is why I'm in Cornwall. And we've heard a lot about human health today, but not an awful lot about wildlife, and particularly about bees and pollinators. It's my passion. It's why I'm so pleased that the resolution going to Cornwall County Council next week also talks about not just a ban on pesticides, but a pollinator strategy for the whole county. And that's a great step forward. I now work as a consultant. My time for Pan UK is free, and I've been helping them put together the toolkit. But we'd really welcome your views on what you think works in it and what doesn't, what could be improved. Being here in Brighton reminds me that at the University of Sussex, with Professor Francis Ratniks, we have the leading bee research in the whole of the UK, possibly in the whole of Europe. Just fantastic studies on the impacts of neonics and a whole range of pesticides and of other factors on bees. And their research is stark and stunning and supports everything we've heard today. And in recent times, we've heard from David Goulson a piece of work called The Toxic Bouquet about the studied impact of herbicide drift and how dramatic and staggering it is, really. In simple terms, if we do nothing as authorities and as individuals, things get worse. The State of Nature UK report for 2016 shows that nature's in trouble, and that 50 organisations, wildlife organisations with membership of millions and volunteers in their thousands who've done the research and done the monitoring, have found that nature is faring worse in the UK than in most other countries. On an index, it's far worse. And pesticides are playing their part. I want to talk just a little bit about inviting the views of residents and visitors. Visitors, particularly in a city that attracts millions every year. The public and public opinion can play a huge part in this. We heard from Glastonbury about the impact of Facebook, but also of the community support and the community pressure, really, and how community pressure leads to political pressure. And in Brighton, I sense very much the same thing, a grassroots movement that is steadily changing things. In Cornwall, we've actually got a situation where the natural environment is so well valued by the population that people really see the importance of this, albeit that it's not an easy path forward. People get the health, compassion, concern, the love of nature, and that they understand it deep down, have a real impact. We heard earlier from Louisa that you thought it was children that is the key word, and I'd like to put bees alongside that as having shifted public perception. And what's interesting is in the Cornwall paper, going to council next week, talk about the reputational risk to the council of not adopting a pesticide-free policy. That's an acknowledgement that the public shift in perception is really important, and social media is playing a huge part of that. We've also heard quite a lot about resistance in old school politicians and resistance from officers. And over the years, I've seen quite a lot of this up close. My experience of pockets of resistance is that there are status quo loving people. There are embedded and old-fashioned views, a culture of skepticism about the new, an anti-change view, and even in some areas a view that actually, in terms of risk, it's always riskier to do something than do nothing and just keep it as it is, because then at least it's no change is noticed. Now that doesn't speak to all local authority officers at all, and the vast majority of people I always work with were great, but those pockets of resistance do exist, and and it's an effort to work them down. What we have heard is how valuable councillors working directly with officers, even in other authorities where there are tiers of local government, how important that is. And finally, I just want to talk about doing the right thing, and it looks blindingly obvious, but what we heard right from the doctor in Canada, one individual woman with the power to affect a huge change, through to the individual champions like Emma in Glastonbury. It's individuals who start this, and it's about leadership from wherever they are, whether it's in the community, whether it's in the health service, whether it's in local government. Those individuals make the change, and it can often come from officers too. And my experience is a lot gets driven from within authorities. So members leading and deciding is part of it. Pushing and persisting is always going to be necessary. It's not an easy or smooth path. So raising it, being dogged, as we heard, and I'm so impressed by what you did in Glastonbury, being dogged, getting it looked into properly. And it's incredibly unpopular even in local authority to talk about the science. and there's almost an anti-science movement growing politically, but science is really put clearly is irrefutable. And the really valuable part of today, I think, using precedent and picking up both the materials, the motions, the reports that have been used before can have a fantastic impact.